Welcome to the floor. I thought we'd get a little bit more comfortable for some Q&As. Okay, I had a heap of questions about behavior management and what I do for behavior management. So one of the main things I do for behavior management is I set up a class dojo. If you haven't heard of Class Dojo, just jump onto Google and type in classdojo.com, and I set that up for my class and I introduce that right at the beginning of the year. I give them points for many different things. I try to make it all positive. I don't really take negative points off at all. I try to make it all really positive. They get points for things like getting their homework completed on time, helping one another, just all of those kind of things. So I try to really highlight the positive behaviors there. So that is one thing that I do. Another thing that I'm implementing as of tomorrow is a behavior chart. So rewarding them for things like lining up by the second bell and independently working, silent reading, and all of those kind of things. So there's 30 boxes on my little behavior chart for each different category, and each time the whole class does it correctly, I cross off one, and so when they get to 30, I'm not 100% sure what I'll do, but I've got tonight to think about that and work out what I'm gonna do. But that is another thing that I have implemented there. Also, just talking to kids and pull them out. So we have rules and consequences. I think consequences are something really important to have in your classrooms, like what happens when these rules break, and actually follow through with those consequences. I was really bad with following through on consequences until I read an article about how important consequences were for kids, because then what is the point of having rules? So at the beginning of the year, when we talk about what's happening in, or how 6W run, we talk about rules and we talk about consequences. So there's 5 rules. I make them up because I am the leader of my classroom. I agree that kids should definitely have a voice in rules and expectations and all of that kind of thing. But I think on day one, I need to set the tone for how I want my classroom to be run, and I am the leader and the kids are looking to me. So that is why I come up with 5 super simple rules. Listen when somebody is talking, follow instructions the first time they are given, work and play safely and quietly, treat others with kindness and respect, and take care of our school and classroom. 5 really simple rules, but they kind of overpin everything, and we talk about them all throughout the term and talk about what that might look like and all of those kind of things. With that, I also have consequences. So I've got 3 levels of consequences. My first one is a warning. If they continue to do that behavior, they're sent out of my classroom, or you might have a timeout chair. My classroom's not big enough for that, so I just send them out of the classroom, and then I will go and have a chat with them. So I'll say, hey, that behavior is not appropriate in my classroom. What are we going to do about it? And have a bit of a talk about, you know, why that's not appropriate. If they come in and they continue to do that behavior, then I email their parents home. And for my class, that tends to work really well. I can send them to a buddy class if I want to. Sometimes that works for certain kids, but for my class, I don't think that I'll need to. Again, I'm only like 4 weeks into teaching them, so we'll see. But those are the couple of things that I do for behavior management, so I hope that was helpful. All right, next question. What grades are classified as upper primary? 4 to 6? You're correct. 4 to 6 is, upper primary in my school anyway. Our junior primary is 1 to 3. We have also got prep, and then senior primary or upper primary is grades 4 to 6. What's my favorite thing about teaching this year level? I've been on year 6 for 5 years now. This is my 6th year, but I had a break in between. I taught year 3 for 2 years and then moved back to year 6. And I just love the relationships. I love that they can work independently. I love that I can have those little conversations with them and actually build those relationships. They're just a really fun age to teach too. You can do a lot more cool things. Just their thought process behind things is really interesting too, and cool to like actually talk about and nut out. And yeah, they're a great age group to teach. I would highly recommend, you know, if you're a pracky, if you're a prac student or a student teacher, doing a prac in the upper years. Be brave and do a prac in the upper school because it's really cool. Year 6 is a vibe. The next question is, have you ever taught a lower primary? Thoughts on going from one extreme to another? So I did my final internship in year 7 when year 7 was in primary school in Queensland. So I did that in year 7, and then I got my first job in year 6, and then I went to year 3. It's not a super extreme. I've heard of people going from year 6 to prep, and I'm like, oh, I don't know how I would cope with that. The biggest thing I noticed was just their level of independence, especially coming back to year 6. I think you plan a lot, not simpler, but a lot more like slower. So they get things obviously they get things at a slower pace to what a 12-year-old would. So I know when I first moved to year 6, a lot of my lessons were still like planning for like a year 3 mindset, and I would finish really quickly, and I would be like, oh my goodness, what am I gonna do now? Whereas now I'm in the rhythm of year 6, and you know, things are quick and we get through things quickly. So I think it would be a huge shock to go back to junior school and have to slow down, because I'm so used to this kind of pace of teaching now where we do things and I've got 20 billion activities to like move on to. It's definitely extreme. Another question is ideas if you have 5 or 10 minutes up your sleeve if a lesson went quicker than expected. Kahoot is great, it's fantastic. I would have a folder on Kahoot, or like favorite a whole heap of Kahoots on what you're teaching, so you could just whip that up. And like Kahoots that are like 5 to 10 questions, because if you're doing Kahoots that are like 20, 30 questions long, it takes too long. You want short and snappy. Other ones you can do is, if they've been really good, reward them. Games like Silent Ball or Heads Down Thumbs Up, or just those kind of class building games are sometimes really fun to just throw at the end, especially if they've been really, really good. It's nice to just have a bit of fun with your class as well. You could do things like silent reading. You could do things like warm-up activities at the end too. So things like quick writes or telling stories to your friend and things like that. The easiest thing to do, I reckon though, I've kind of yabbered on a bit, but the easiest thing to do, I reckon, if your lesson has finished quickly, is to do like a revision of the lesson and get them into partners and get them to tell each other what they have learnt in that lesson. So get them to kind of revise each other and go, okay, I learnt X, Y, Z, or I learnt X, Y, Z, and get them to actually talk about it and go through their notes. I think there's so much value in talking to one another. And I think we sometimes lose that in the classroom because we do all of the talking and we kind of forget that the kids need to talk to learn as well. So that's what I'm learning to do this year, that if I finish a lesson quickly, or even at the end of my lesson, schedule time for that kind of revision where the kids can get into partners or threes and actually talk about what they have learnt. Oh, I get this one all the time. Advice for future teachers. This comes up in my DMs on Instagram all the time. You know, I'm doing teaching, do you have any advice for me? All that kind of stuff. And I always, for some reason, open them really late at night, and I'm like, oh, I don't have any advice at the moment. I don't know what to do. So my advice, I guess, for future teachers is to, 1, go to your lectures, go to your tutes, all right? Don't do the super cool uni thing and then don't think you can go to anything. You want to be a teacher, you want to teach people, you need to learn how to be taught. So go to uni, all right? Go to your tutes. You'll thank me later. Probably my other advice is to just, if you can volunteer in a school. If you could get a job in a school, obviously some people can't, and that's totally fine. It's not necessary at all. But if you can, do that. Get as much experience in schools as you can to work out A, if you actually really love it, and B, where you might like to fit in the school and things like that, or different schools around. Lots of schools, every school has a different culture and a different environment, so it's good to kind of dip your toe in all of the waters and see what that's all about. Some more advice, I suppose, specifically to when you go on prac, is to make sure that you not only get to know your students but really get to know your prac teacher. It's quite a daunting experience being a prac teacher, having somebody else come into your classroom and then kind of having to offload what you have already planned to someone else. And it's awesome because you get to, you know, impart all of your knowledge into this wonderful prac student, but it can also be quite scary because you're trusting your 28 however many kids you've got into the hands of this person who you don't even really know yet. And that's probably my biggest thing, is get to know your prac teacher, get to know their teaching style, get to know their behavior management style, and take lots of notes. My biggest bugbear is when prac students come in and think they can hold it all in their head, and I'm like, I can't even hold it all in my head. So I don't know how you're doing it. Take heaps of notes, because if you're taking heaps of notes, at the end of the day when your prac teacher goes, do you have any questions for me? You can go, actually, can you tell me more about your behavior management system? Could you tell me more about this child? Or I noticed you disciplined this child this way, but you disciplined this child this way. Can you tell me why you did that? Because they're all the really great, rich discussion questions that you can have with your prac teacher, so that when you're standing up in front of the class, you know that this student actually might be dealing with some really hard stuff at home, and that's why the teacher just knelt down beside them and whispered to them. Whereas this kid has been having a jolly good time doing whatever they want, and that's why the teacher, you know, pulled them up during a lesson or something like that. So that would probably be my biggest thing, is take notes and talk to your teacher. Make sure that you get things in early, like your lesson plans and your unit plans, so that you can really have time to talk about it. And I know it's really stressful being on prac, and there's lots of things to do and consider, but if you do those things and you make sure you're organized, it's going to be so much better for you, because your prac teacher is going to be able to trust you, and therefore might even give you more lessons and more things to do. So that would probably be my biggest advice. But yeah, just have fun. Teaching is fun. Teaching is great fun. It's creative, it's super fun, and yeah, it's fantastic. Okay, I've yabbered on for like 15 minutes now, so I'm going to answer one more question. How do you plan out my week? I hope I kind of answered that in this bit of a day in the life. I use a planner, I write everything out, and then I go and find all of my resources. Being on year 6 now for 5 years, I have a lot of stuff that I'm reusing, but I'm not I'm reusing it, but I'm making it suit this cohort that I have, if that makes sense, because you know, we want to work smarter, not harder. Is my classroom single cell, or do I co-teach? I assume that's like one teacher per classroom. Not 100% sure that what that means, but yes, I am the only teacher in my classroom. I have a wonderful teacher aide that comes in and helps me, but yes, I'm the only teacher in this classroom. The way we work it in year 6 at my school though, is there are 2 other year 6 classes as well, so we're 3 stream, and we do a lot of swapping. So I teach all of the English, one of my colleagues teaches all of the science, and one of my other colleagues teaches all of the history. So that's why you might hear me talk about having different classes and things like that. It's because I teach all of the year 6 classes, and I have my own maths class, which is a mixture of all the year 6 students. So, but yes, I'm the only teacher in my room. Anyway, that was all of the questions. I had another one there. I'd love to see how you structure each day. Well, I hope me doing more day in the life might give you some insight into how I structure my day and how I structure my classroom as well. Anyway, that is all from me today. I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have, please give it a like, hit that subscribe button, ring that notification bell, all the fun stuff. Drop a comment down below too. Do you have another question that you would like me to answer in my next day in the life video? Just put a hashtag there and say, I don't know, question for teaching, or question of the day. Let's just do question of the day. Why not? I've seen it on some other YouTube channels and it seems to work really well. So if you've got a question, drop it down, use the hashtag question of the day, and we'll go from there. But yes, I hope you've enjoyed this video. It's been fun chatting and I've really enjoyed it, and I will see you in my next one. Bye friends.